I think we are live. So fingers crossed this works and it goes
Awesome.
out there. Oh, good. Yes, I'm seeing people joining. So
People
yay.
are joining. Awesome.
Hello, everybody. I am so delighted you all are joining us. I'm so delighted to be here with Dr. Grace Hamman, who wrote our virtual book club book for Advent, Ask of Old Paths, Medieval Virtues and Vices for a Whole and Holy Life. Thank you so much for writing this book and sharing it with us. It has been a delight to read it over the past couple of weeks. Most of us are coming to the end of it. We're on like chapter 7, the last couple
Awesome.
of vices. So we're still reading and discussing, but thank you. Well, before I get to our questions, could I ask you to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what prompted you to write the book.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Grace Hamman. I have a doctorate in English literature, specializing in Middle English poetry and contemplative
Mm.
writing. So, you know, very niche, very fun at parties. But I live in Denver, well, in the suburbs of Denver with my husband and my 3 kids. And this is my second book. I wrote Jesus Through Medieval Eyes a couple years ago. And that's me.
Mm.
I mostly do stuff with my children and write things. That's what I do with my spare time. So,
And
uh,
can I just say, I love the name Constance. You point her name. You talk about that naming
yes,
choice in the book, and amazing.
you.
So,
I love
do,
it
do,
too.
do
It's one of those names where you get people like saying to you, now, is that a family name? And you're like,
right?
no, we just like
Mm,
it. So,
there's a story there. Yeah.
yes, yes. So it is fun. It's fun because, um, yeah, it's fun to. I'm a name nerd, so it was always one
Mhm.
that I really liked, and I was delighted when my husband also liked it. So yeah,
God, Bort,
that's
that's wonderful.
awesome.
So you've shared a little bit about your background in medieval studies. What particularly drew you to write to tackle the virtues and the vices? Like this is a huge topic.
Yes. Well, it's been a long journey, honestly. I I'd say that the roots of this project are really deep because
Mm,
I have always been interested, kind of as long as I've been an adult in like spiritual formation
mhm,
and those kinds of questions. And then the like medieval side came into it when I started writing my dissertation.
mm,
I had done this wonderful in my grad program and in most grad programs, you do a big group of tests before you write your dissertation, and you do it off these lists of different texts. And one of my lists that I crafted with an advisor was called "How to Be Good."
mm,
And it was medieval people's writings on goodness and what it
mm,
meant to be a good person. And so a lot of what Ask of Old Paths includes comes out of this very niche, very strange category of medieval pastoral and
mm,
spiritual formation writings that were very popular in that era. And some of these books are some of the like sort of medieval bestsellers.
hmm,
So they were good to know for my dissertation, but that list sort of jump started me into thinking about these words. I talk about that a little bit in the introduction, how I encountered these words, and I was so
mm,
struck by how much more power and heft they have
mm, mhm,
than say um, comparable words do
mhm,
today. So a word like meekness or a word even like wrath, all of them just felt more powerful and more specific to me.
mm, mhm,
So that then became kind of I had children. I wrote a dissertation on humility in late medieval contemplative writing and poetry. And, but it all kind of was like simmering in the back of my mind. Like, I
mhm.
want to go back to these words. And so then I was like, I'm going to write my virtue word book. And I just went for it. And so
I
that's
love it.
the story. Yeah.
And here it is. So you finally were able to serve it up after it
Finally,
simmered
yeah,
for a
like a
long time.
decade later. Yeah.
Well, and it really does carry that sense. I mean, your writing voice and the way you've structured the chapters of slow, simmering, pondering, like, let's journey together. Let's
Mhm.
spend some time in the garden. Let's explore these all of those things. So that like deep thoughtfulness really comes through and is much appreciated. I feel like from a reader perspective, it really invites you to sit and think, because I think
Thanks.
attention could be this like, oh, here's a book about how to be good and not be, you know
Yes.
what I mean?
Well, I think that's how those words all feel is they to us today, they have this sort of like "Now, sweetie," like the
Mhm.
old woman, like, lecturing
Mhm.
you vibe, most of these words,
Mhm.
especially the virtue words. The vice
Mhm.
words still crackle with some level of interest, because
Mhm.
I think most of us are more familiar with them in
Mhm.
general, um, but the virtue words are so dried out, and so I'm really glad that you picked up that contemplative sense that I was really trying to instill this with, because
Mhm.
for me, this project was not a quick one. The writing
Mm.
of it wasn't too long, but the thinking about it was very, very long.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I'm really glad that comes out because I actually don't think there's any other responsible way to think and
Mhm.
talk about virtues. I think that if
Yeah.
we get too flippant and too light and too loose, we end up looking more, getting into that finger pointing mode or getting
Mhm.
into that kind of like um losing our sense of context, losing our
Mm.
sense of oh my gosh, one of the most challenging and beautiful things about the virtues is that they look different in different people's
Mhm.
lives. That doesn't mean they're
Mhm.
relative, they're not
Mhm.
relative, but, they don't make sense outside of the narrative of someone's life. Something that is costly for you, that was an act of great fortitude and took a long time of cultivating that
Mm.
fortitude. For somebody else might be like, "Oh, that was like, really? That was
Mhm.
costly? That took all that?" And we just don't know that about other people's lives, and so that's what I think that's also what keeps them super interesting is that
Mm.
the virtues, they're flexible. They follow if you're following Christ, he treated different people differently in different moments. And so we know that there's this flexibility, this inherent contextuality about the virtues
Mhm.
that's really beautiful, but also really challenging and makes discernment sort of an ongoing
Mm.
process.
Mhm. Oh, and I love how that comes through with your in the early chapter when you talk about Christ's invitation, like, do you wanna be made whole? And this, yeah, individual nature and this imagery of healing and nurture and growth and maturation versus kind of like self-help or a life hack or,
Yes,
some of the
exactly.
ways it can be
Exactly. I mean,
framed.
no, I love that you frame it that way because I think sometimes we mistake things that make our life easier for things that are good.
Mhm.
And when you read
Mhm.
more about the virtues, the more you're like, oh no, like this is not
This
just
will not make my life easier.
not a self-help hack. Like this is not
Yeah.
something and not that, I think in the long run, you do have you often not always, but I think in the graciousness of God, you often have that sense of like, all right, I've been obedient. Like I and so that
Mhm.
is a weight lifting, but it doesn't
Mhm.
mean that the thing is easy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, so good. So one of the questions I asked for some questions. I think listeners who are joining, you can I think drop questions live here. It's my first time hosting a Substack live, but I did ask for some ahead of time in case that feature didn't work. So a couple for you. So someone was curious which virtue or vice was the most difficult to research, understand, and put into written words.
Oh, that's always a good question. And there's different answers to be
Mhm.
honest. I think it depends on what angle. I think some of the ones that were the hardest
Mm.
to write about were the ones that have a lot of, baggage attached to them. So,
Mm.
for instance, I left the chastity and lust chapter until last
Mhm.
because I felt very anxious about tackling something that for, like, my fellow millennials who
Mhm.
had sort of a, purity culture was very, very burdensome for a lot of people
Mhm.
in a way that wasn't a healthy kind of burden. It
Mhm.
was a, like, your body is bad, you're
Mhm.
all this stuff. So I was very nervous to write about that because I was like, I really want one of the goals of this book was I want to be able to uncover again for folks the beauty of them and the
Mhm.
invitation of them. This is actually not just invitations into holiness as we can sort of just slap that on something, but wholeness as also including beauty and a full
Mhm.
life. And so That was a hard one. I think another hard one was love, to be honest,
Mhm,
because
mhm,
love is such a big, baggy word that it was really tricky to choose the texts that I wanted to
mm,
use to go deeper into it and not kind of stay kind of at a airplane view, but really
mhm,
to try to do both,
mhm.
because you have to do some of that with love, but also to get down into some of the nitty-gritty. So I was really happy. I rewrote that chapter a couple times, and I was really happy when I thought when I kind of was going back through my notes and found the quadrifoil stuff again, because I was like, oh, an organizational
Right.
like
Framing.
thing that I can use. Oh, thank
Yeah.
goodness. So I think those two stand out as ones that for different reasons were difficult to write.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense because there's so many directions you could take some of these things. There's so yeah, how do you could write whole books on each.
Yes. No, you could, and that
So
was
to digest it down.
the beauty and the dissatisfying thing is that
Mhm.
every chapter you just basically have to be like, well, I fit what I can. Hopefully that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah, this is what it is. Yeah, that totally makes
there's
sense.
so much more. I hope readers will pick up these things for themselves or relate it. You just hope that they function like a door opening rather than
Yeah.
comprehensive. Um, yeah. So
Yeah, well, and actually that leads nicely into another question someone had. They were referencing all of your footnotes and some of the other resources you cite or, return to in your notations. Do you have one or two top suggestions for people who want to go further or want to explore deeper, like some of the ones that you maybe used in your research that you think, "Oh, well, this might be of interest."
this is a funny question as well, because one of the funny things about this book is that some of these books that I use, and I say this in the book, some of them are not like necessarily pleasant reading that is
Mm,
accessible for us today. So
mhm,
I use things like the Book of Vices and Virtues, Jacob's Well. These are all coming out of this tradition. This book was first written by a friar, the Psalm Leroy, and it's these lists meant for priests originally, and then they become
mm, mhm,
public facing for lay folks. And some of them are really great, and those are I draw so many of the metaphors out
mhm,
of that category of books, but they don't make for necessarily great reading by
mhm,
yourself.
mhm,
So I would recommend, if you're interested in kind of concepts like the philosophy behind virtues and vices, you can't go wrong with picking up Alistair McIntyre's book After Virtue, which
okay,
situates you really well in the sense of thinking about virtue language and how it is
mm,
different than moral relativism, how it kind of violates some of our common cultural assumptions
hmm,
today. The frictions of that. That's a really great book. If you want something medieval, uh, I always direct people towards Julian of Norwich. She does not do like these lists of the virtues and vices like
hmm,
I present here, but she is in that same tradition of reading as formation.
hmm,
So you don't read for information, actually, you read to be
hmm,
formed.
hmm,
And that's kind of at the core of this book is um, how what you do and how you think, what you are looking at, what you are practicing forms your character. And that's the whole point of thinking about virtues and also learning about vices in order to
mhm,
way. And so she does a wonderfully formative style of writing that I think captures something really essential, even though she doesn't do that kind of list
mhm.
format.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. But if you want another book on virtues and vices, Rebecca DeYoung's Glittering Vices
Mm,
is phenomenal.
okay.
So good. I'm
Such
sure.
a great title.
Yes. No, and it really is. She does more of the earlier version. So she's working with the Desert Fathers and Mothers
Mm, mhm.
then up into Aquinas. So I'm kind of
Mhm.
like just a little later. She's
Yeah.
doing
So those
some
are
of
good companion books,
those
yeah,
are
for people.
wonderful. Yeah.
Wonderful. Oh, that's good. Good. So catch that. People who want further reading. Um, Someone else was curious about the illustrations that you include that were both inspiring and disturbing in some cases.
Yes.
Have you seen any of the originals yourself?
Oh, let me think for a second. I get confused about which ones I use in which book, because Jesus Through Medieval Eyes, I have seen some of those in person, and now I have to think if I've seen any of the ones I use here.
I think we all were very troubled by the envy, eating the heart
Yes,
one.
it is a
Whew,
very
that's ever so
disturbing.
visceral, right?
Yes, yes, and I've been to the Walters where that is, but I don't
Mhm.
think it's out on display, unfortunately, because it
Yeah.
is, I looked for it actually, because I was there shortly after writing that chapter, but, that one wasn't out because it is, but there are other ones you can find that have similar iconography.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any of these in person
Mm,
though, 'cause
yeah.
some of them are pretty obscure, like, some of
Mm,
them are in manuscripts and, not available at museums, and then some of them are I have not been to Germany, where actually a lot of
mm.
the art in this book is from Germany, yeah, I don't think I've seen any of these
Yeah,
in
interesting. Yeah, well, I looked up some hedgehog and apples
Mhm.
ones and, just being like, I wanna see what these things look like. So it's a great feature of the book to have some of the art included and then to be able to even hunt it up and see some of it in color and things. So
Yes,
I loved that piece.
yes.
A number of people wanted me to just express their gratitude to you. They say, "Thank you
Aw,
for writing this. Thank you for sharing your love of the medieval and Jesus with us. It's been a top read of the year." So many people it resonated with. Um, someone says, someone asks, pick a region, a faith community, or a particular person in medieval times. How do you think they would respond to your book? Which I thought was an
oh my
interesting
gosh, I'm
question.
sure they would think I think anyone from the medieval era who read my book would think I was like an alien from outer space,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's like C.S. Lewis talks about this in, his I talk about this text all the time, but in his
Mm,
introduction to Athanasius's On the Incarnation
mm,
that he wrote, for his friend, Sister Penelope Lawson's
mm,
translation, he talks about how we need the clean sea breeze of the past blowing through our
mhm.
minds to blow away all of our assumptions about the way the world works. And he makes this little joke where he says, the text of the future would be just as useful, but unfortunately, we don't have access to them, you know?
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think they would see all of the things that I bring in, because this book is, meant to function as a bridge. It's not meant to be like a textbook
Mm,
or like a straight on, like, all of the good things and all of the bad things about each of the ways that
mhm.
medieval people talked about the virtues. So there's a fair amount of my own postmodern, opinion in there. And I think they would be like, that woman is delusional.
Yeah, what are they talking about?
And maybe, maybe
Mhm,
hopefully some of it would be like, wow, that's really thought provoking and helpful.
mhm.
And I'm glad to have this interlocutor in this
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
But
Yeah, which is such a lovely thing about reading within church history is it
yes,
does displace that kind of like chronological snobbery or the blind spots we just don't
yeah,
even know we have. So I love that. I mean, I think at the beginning of the book group, we kind of shared some of our preconceptions about the medieval era, like for lay people, like whether that's been formed by movies or literature,
yeah,
so I loved how this really looked at some primary texts to sort of say, well, what was forming them and what was their spirituality shaped like? And to I don't know if you can ever blow all the cobwebs off, right? To try and bridge that
right.
gap. But it took us a little bit nearer, a little bit out of some of those preconceptions. So I loved that. Okay, I think we got time for a couple more here. Someone shares they moved to the Mojave Desert recently and spent 4 months this summer in the Sonoran Desert. What are some of your greatest lessons from the desert in faith or love or life? If you have any of
Oh
them
my
to share.
gosh. Well, for folks who like follow me on a regular basis,
Mm,
you might recall that I have a giant love for the Sonoran Desert. That's where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
That's my heart home still. When I am there, I always think my suspicion is that heaven, this is so cheesy, but sorry, bear with me, will
We'll take
smell
it.
like the Sonoran Desert in March.
Oh, I
The
love it.
smell of the Sonoran Desert in March is the most like heavenly thing,
Hmm.
like the closest I think to something divine that I've encountered. But what I love about the desert are a few things, and what I've been spiritually formed by my experience in the desert is that the desert looks, a lot of people, especially when they first encounter it, it's ugly. It does not
Mm-hmm.
look beautiful in kind of conventional ways. And so you have to, if you want to appreciate it and see it in its beauty, unless you are a very unique person who like just automatically does, but most people don't because we haven't been culturally formed to see deserts as
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. They're like, what? It's so brown, it's so dry. But what I really appreciate about that is that one, it calls your attention to like the minutia. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to pay close attention to like the beauty of the weird desert animals and desert creatures, which is an exercise that helps you to pay attention to beauty in other people or beauty in other life situations that you would not, that are not like obviously
Mm-hmm.
really lovely. So there's a spiritual exercise in that I think is really formative and out of the ordinary in a lot of ways. I don't think it's taught. It's how we automatically live life,
Mm-hmm.
or at least it's not how I automatically live life. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's been really valuable to me. And then you don't dismiss things as quickly if you're in
Mm-hmm.
that space. So the medieval era, for instance, which is often dismissed by Christians as like or anybody in pop culture as well as a time without much apparent value,
Mm-hmm.
that's on its immediate face, actually holds riches and
Mm-hmm.
secrets and treasures for those who are willing to look. And so I think that's something really lovely about the desert.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I love that. I've never been to the deserts of the West or Southwest or anything. So yeah, that's enticing. The smell of the desert. How can you describe it? What does it smell like for the so those who have
So
never?
I grew up in Phoenix, and in the spring, you have a mix of orange blossoms because
Mm,
there were all these orange trees there for many. They're mostly gone now, but for many years in around Phoenix and Tucson, there were big orchards of fruit trees, and so it's a mix of orange blossoms and then like creosote and cactus bloom. And
mm,
so it's this really, and the air of the desert is so dry that you just it's this dry, like beautiful,
mm.
fragrant. I don't know. I can't even explain it. I wish they made a candle of it because
You'd
I
bring it home. You'd have.
yes, I would. And creosote is just wonderful. The smell of
Mm,
creosote after rain is just really amazing. But yeah, it's hard to explain.
yeah, I love
Very
that. I bet
inviting.
somebody out there has tried to make a candle. I'm sure, giving it a shot. Okay, here's one more. Um, you said there was so much more to expound on the sacrament of marriage in the book. If you have time now, what would you share? That's a big question, but if
What
there's
about marriage?
one element, I haven't gotten to that part in the book yet, so I don't know. That must come in a later chapter. What the questioner is referring to. Does that resonate with you as something you reference?
I'm trying to remember. I assume it was in the chastity chapter,
Mm-hmm.
but obviously, speaking generally about the sacrament of marriage, one thing is that it is a school for virtue or a school of vice
Mm.
for vice,
Ooh,
depending
yeah, that'll
on
preach.
how
Yeah.
you enter into it. And so, just like all relationships, but I think marriage, because you're spending so much time with one person, is
Mhm.
in particular a deep place where your worst bits
Mhm.
are going to come to the surface and hopefully your best bits, but you have to work at that, right?
Mhm.
Like, so I think I actually do think all different forms of life have particular invitations to virtues. There's not, when I was
Mhm.
writing the chastity chapter, that was something I was really concerned about was I want to write this for people who are coming from all different backgrounds and experiences because the virtues are for everyone. They might take, they definitely do take different forms in different lives, but it's not like, oh, single people, you
Mhm.
are called to chastity, and married people,
Right.
big check. Like you're
Yeah, yeah, don't worry about this one.
no,
Mhm.
that's not how that works at all. And
Mhm.
that's such a turn off, I think.
Mhm.
Pun, accidental pun.
Mhm.
But marriage, so it is a school for virtues and a school for vices. And I think um, marriage, if I'm talking about it in that chapter as I remember, which I haven't looked at it for a little bit, it's that we do have that mentality of like, okay, well, now that you're married, anything goes or whatever. I think a lot
Mhm.
of people, speaking of purity culture, were raised in that sense of like, and now it's a free for all.
Mhm.
Um, and sexually speaking, and that is actually still not chastity.
Mhm.
Chastity is seeing the whole person in other people
Mhm.
and not using them. And so I think in marriage, there's still a temptation to lust and to just use.
Mhm.
One of the like greatest pitfalls I think in marriage is using the person you're married to
Mhm.
for your own personal happiness, because that's how
Mhm.
we're taught culturally, is like marriage is for happiness, and often then
Mhm.
we end up using our spouse for our personal happiness or for our bodily pleasure. And so
Yeah.
that's actually one of the things about writing that chapter that was eye-opening for me personally was
Mhm.
I wasn't really struggling with lust per se as an individual, but I have used people in unchaste ways, not sexually, but I have been
Yeah.
unchaste in my relationships with other people. And
Yeah.
that was a real whoa, I had never thought about that or made that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think colloquial for most of us, especially in evangelical corners of the church, in our spiritual imagination, like, chastity and celibacy are synonyms or something, like, we've made that,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so really
Like,
exploring what
only with
is.
sexual abstinence, right? That's the
Yeah.
only connection, and so thinking about it from a much bigger angle has just been,
Mhm.
at least in my neck of the woods, kind of not really a thing, like, not really
Mhm.
the way that the word was used, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, now I'm very curious to read that chapter. So last question I have for you, is we talked about this a little bit at the beginning, and I kinda love that throughout this, kind of incidentally, we have threads of finding treasures in the desert or even in the, like, mysteries of the medieval era or in the hiddenness of your closest marriage relationships. Like, there's so much invitation in those metaphors for people who come to this kind of conversation, or even just the general concept of spiritual direction and spiritual formation with baggage of like spiritual drivenness or scrupulosity
Mhm.
or,
Mm.
a lot of anxiety or
Mhm.
feelings about performance. What would you, if you could speak to them, offer them as far as not like how to get this right so it doesn't become burdens, not an added layer of worry about how to get this right, but how would you maybe release them from some of that burden in your invitation to explore virtues and vices, to say, look, this isn't another checklist, obviously, or perfectionism, but we a lot of that is really woven in evangelical culture. So how would you speak to that?
I think that's a really great question, and it was something that I actually felt really burdened by while writing
Mhm.
this book, is I really, really did not want this book to feel like it lands like a heavy freaking plank on your
Mhm.
back,
Mhm.
another thing that you are sucking at and failing at.
Mhm.
And this
Mhm.
is why, I think one of the most significant medieval insights about virtues and vices is, I mean, they definitely took this language too far at times. They
Mhm.
definitely fostered certain forms of religious scrupulosity that were very devastating and detrimental to people. Um, all that is true of their time, uh, maybe even more so of our time. And so this is a
Mhm.
risk of this language. All good, powerful language has risks to it. Uh,
Mm.
always have to carry that risk and be careful with our language
Mm-hmm.
as we use it. So that's one thing. But what I really love about how they structured their list is that humility comes first. And part of what humility means is that failure is a given. It is
Mm-hmm.
not it is not going to happen. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's part of the practice of humility. And Julian of Norwich actually is really good on this issue. She's really good on humility and on I think woven. I'm sure she struggled with scrupulosity at some
Mm-hmm.
point because woven in her book is this real resistance to that kind of thinking. But this sense of, hey, this is going to be hard, and that's okay. And that doesn't mean you're not invited into it.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean you're not going to struggle with it. And you're definitely going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, no one likes failing, but it is like everything else worth learning.
Mm-hmm.
Reading, learning how to walk, learning how to run, learning how to play tennis, learning how to build things with wood in a woodshop, anything wonderful and joyous, painting, all of it, you are going to be bad at, and bad at certain pieces and good at some things and bad at other things. And those actually are not a reflection in any way, shape, or form on your value as a person,
Mm-hmm.
because your sole source of value, and I think we take this as harsh, but it's actually so freeing. You are not valuable in any way for your successes. Those are
Mm-hmm.
not the things that make you valuable, and they will never um, be the thing that makes you valuable. What makes
Mm-hmm.
you valuable is solely that you are a child of God, whom God loves so much
Mm-hmm.
that he died on the cross.
Mm-hmm.
And that is literally it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also why in the love chapter, why when we're talking about enemies, when we're talking about anybody we disagree with, that is also their whole source of value. And so you have this woven braid of humility and love that have to be the source for everything else, because otherwise this just turns into something with which we cudgel ourselves and cudgel other
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
making it all a total waste. And that's why
Yeah.
someone like Gregory the Great, writes, without humility, all the other virtues are like dust in the wind. They just blow
Mm-hmm.
away. They're useless. They're pointless. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the core.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is cherry on top, extraneous,
Mm-hmm.
helpful paths into wholeness, but not the core. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate that about medieval ideas of the virtues and the vices. I mean, to me, that is freedom to hold on to that and be like, well, of
Mm-hmm.
course I want these things. I want to be merciful. I want to be just, and I'm going to be bad at them. And I'm going to keep trying because thankfully that is not the source of my value. It is just an invitation to be
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yeah, that's good. The belovedness is such an anchor there. That I think really pairs well with the metaphor of the garden and the purpose of wholeness and maturity. We all really loved this image of Jesus in the floppy gardener's hat in the garden, just
Yes.
with us and tending. And I think that even that lens is so helpful too, of like, and also God is not there with a report card. It really
No.
is the tending of the beloved for goodness and for fruitfulness and well-being and wholeness and all of those things. So the metaphors goes really help. They're wonderful in exploring this. So thank you. Congratulations. I saw this made some end of the year like
Yeah.
top lists, right? Did it make CT list? Am I remembering correctly?
It
Christianity
won
Today's.
Christianity Today's Book of the Year in Spiritual Formation, which I was really
Congratulations.
thank you so much. I was
Well done.
pleasantly surprised. So
Yeah, that's
that was
great.
lovely. Yeah.
Well, hopefully it continues to make its way into the hands of readers and that they find it nourishing. Can you tell people joining in a little bit of where they can connect with you further? Are you working on any future projects, or where can they find you if they want to connect with you online?
Yeah, so I am here on Substack at Grace Hamman, and that's Hamman, always a confusing last name for people. Um, gracehammond.substack.com. I write a newsletter called Medievalish that is once a month, and it is just a little peek into some medieval things I've been thinking about and some more information on what I'm up to. I have a regular website to gracehammond.com where you can find links and other things I've written for other publications. And I have a podcast. It's on hiatus right now. I need a little break. We just like changed my office and my husband's office into rooms for our big kids so that they don't have to share anymore. So I am like floating around my house right now, like trying to work on stuff. And I'm just in this untethered. So do note that if you go to the podcast, you'll only be listening to back episodes for a little while.
Okay.
But I have some.
But yeah, if they're new to it, like they have a whole library there, archive there, right?
And then I am working on a new project, but right now it is just a baby that has no home yet. So it's very infant stages. So hopefully that will someday see the light of day. We'll see.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, for joining us, for answering our questions, for writing this book. It was a delight and a grace to speak with you. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. It was really fun. And also like my first ever Substack Live. Like how
hooray! Now we know. Yeah, it's pretty user friendly. So we made it. So hopefully, I believe for those listening, once I end this, I think it automatically posts to both of our Substack channels so people can watch it after the fact and join us at a different time. So we're glad for that. Anyway, thank you all for joining as well. And I'm going to click end here. Have a lovely, blessed remainder of your Advent season, everyone. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
Yay. Almost. Yay.